Okay, so আজকে আমরা একটা paper speedrun session করব. Paper speedrun sessions are a signature session of first paper CS. Now before we get started, I want you to have the right mindset for paper 2. Now see, paper 2 is different from any other subject's paper. For instance, in mathematics, you usually apply a formula and simplify to reach the answer. But in this paper, here, it's more than that. It's about sequential thinking and organizing steps to build a complete solution. That's the real skill this paper develops, and that's what we will focus on today. So since this is a speedrun session, আমরা directly চলে যাব আমাদের question number 1. Okay, let's begin. Question number 1. We can already understand that this is a test data question. The ask is that we need to check for the largest or smallest acceptable data, so the acceptable upper boundary and lower boundary. The correct answer is C, extreme test data. Question number 2. 4 requirements for validating inputs and 5 types of validation checks are given. So আমাদের কিছু input দেওয়া আছে and এই input গুলো আমাদের match করতে হবে for the correct validation checks. The first data is date of birth must be between 2 given dates, so it takes a range. Let's connect this with range check. The second requirement is name has been entered, so it is obvious that this is presence check. Third, password has exactly 12 characters. Let's match it with the length check. And fourth, student ID must contain 2 letters followed by 4-digit number. So this has a particular format, so let's connect this with format check. Part B of this question, identify and describe one verification check. Now we have 2 verification checks in our syllabus. One is double entry check, another is visual check. So write double entry check. The description is enter the data twice and compare both entries are identical values. So we need to enter the data twice and compare, because verifying means to compare from a secondary source, so compare both entries are identical values. Question number 3. The following pseudocode algorithm uses a count control loop to read 10 names and store them in an array that is given. So this is using count control loop. We need to rewrite the algorithm using a condition control loop. So we have 2 condition control loop. One is while loop, another is repeat until loop. So let's write this code. Let's rewrite this code in while loop. So let's declare a variable. So declare count as integer. The count at first is assigned to 1. We need to declare this variable because when it comes to for loop has an inbuilt variable, but while loop does not have that quality. So we need to declare a separate variable. So আমরা declare করব count as integer, and count is assigned to 1, while count is less than or equal to 10. So from 1 to 10, this loop is going to run in cycles, in 10 cycles. So while count is less than or equal to 10, output please enter name, input name, names. The array is going to store the input name, and we're going to increment the count, and that will be the end of our loop for 4 marks. Question number 4. A telephone number with 13 characters is input. The first character is a plus followed by a 2-digit country code, for example, and the example is given. So write an algorithm using pseudocode to input the telephone number. As soon as you read this line, you need to realize that we need to declare a variable that is going to store the telephone number that is going to be input by the user. Alright, so that is the first requirement. Second, extract the 2-digit country code. This will require us to use SUBSTRING function, the built-in pseudocode function SUBSTRING, that is going to extract for us the 2 characters that represents the country code. Third requirement, output the matching country. Fourth, output unknown if there is no matching country. So the first statement in our answer, let's prompt a question that output enter a phone number, and we can hope that user is going to enter us the correct phone number. The phone number has in it the country code. So let's use a variable. Let's use a variable code that is going to store the country code. We use substring, the function, and inside the function we have 3 parameters, 3 input for this function. The first is the phone number itself. The second parameter is the is the position from which we are going to start extracting. So we are going to start extracting from the second character. And the third parameter is the amount of character we need to extract. So we are going to extract 2 characters. So this is going to be stored in the variable code. Now let's introduce case of statement. So case of code, if the code is equal to 44, we're going to output UK, because 44 is the country code for UK. And if it is 20 should be inside double quotation, so that is a mistake. So 20, if it is 20, code equals 20, let's output Egypt. And otherwise, if none of these match with the code, with the country code, we are going to output unknown, and that will be end of our case statement. Ebar question number B, part B of this question. Explain how you could change the algorithm to repeatedly prompt for the telephone number. Repeatedly prompt for the telephone number. So this indicates validation checks. Until, now this is a hint as well that we might use the repeat until loop, because it is the most preferred loop structure for validation checks. So until the number entered is 13 characters in length, any code used must be fully explained. Now in this type of answers, we can write little paragraphs, and we can also put slide in some pseudocode keywords as well. So the first statement, let's write apply validation check using repeat until loop, because we're going to repeatedly prompt for the telephone number. So we are going to apply a loop, and it's going to be repeat until. Repeat until is the best loop for validation check, because repeat until loop stops when the condition is true. Input the number and find its length using the length function. So we're going to check if the length is 13 characters or not, so we need to use the length function. And the third statement, repeatedly prompt for the number inside the loop if length is not 13. Question number 5. 2 library routines used in programming are mod function and diff. State the purpose of each of the library routines and give one example pseudocode statement for each. Now the mod function, the purpose for mod is it is used to return the remainder of a division, and an example pseudocode is the variable remainder is assigned to mod of 5, 2. So when 5 is divided by 2, the remainder is 1. 1 is stored in this variable remainder. The purpose of diff function, it is used to return the integer quotient of a division. So when we divide 5 by 2, the quotient is 2, because 2 times 2 is 4. 1 is remainder, which is stored when we use mod function. 2 is the quotient, which is stored in this quotient variable. Question number 6. An algorithm has been written in pseudocode to generate a random integer between 1 and 100 inclusive. So 1 and 100 included, and the value is stored in the integer n. So n is going to store the random number. The question also says integer. Random function generates decimal numbers. So আমাদেরকে যদি এটা integer convert করতে হয়, আমাদের round function use করতে হবে, so that we can avoid the decimal place. The second line says the user enters a guess for the number, and the algorithm indicates whether the guess is higher or lower than the random number. The first line, so আমরা line by line check করব. The first line is counter is assigned to 0. This is perfectly alright. The second line, n is assigned to round. So round function use করেছে, very good. Random function use করেছে times 99, 1. So এখানে আমরা একটা decimal place allow করছি, 1 decimal place, but আমাদের integer number দরকার. Integer means non-decimal number. So এখানে 1 হবে না, এখানে 0 হবে, 0 decimal place. So first error is in line 2. Now let's move on. Let's collect all the errors. Line number 3, repeat. ঠিক আছে. Line 4, output statement. Line 5, input statement is correct. Line 6, if g or the guess number is greater than the actual number, then the number is lower than your guess. Okay, so line number 8, output statement is incorrect. If guess is greater than the actual number, আমাদের output করতে হবে the number is greater than your guess, not lower. In line number 8, let's move on. This was the second error. Line 9 is all right. 10, 11, 12, 13 is correct as well. Line 14, counter is assigned to counter plus 1. So counter assigned to counter plus 1, which means counter increment is happening inside the else. So if the if condition is incorrect, only then we are going to increment the counter. But amader eta, this is not what we want. We want counter to increment regardless of the input is lower or higher or whatever it may be. As soon as the user enters a number, আমরা counter ke +1 করব, because the user has entered a guess and we need to count the number of guess, total guess. So এটা if condition এর বাইরে হবে. Line number 14, last error. Line number 15 correct, 16 is also correct. Line number 17, output well done, you took guess attempts. Now guess is not even a variable declared in this code, in this pseudocode, so এখানে guess হবে না, এখানে হবে counter. Well done, you took counter attempts, because counter is counting the number of guess. So let's write this down quickly. Part B, identify one method to make the algorithm maintainable. Give an example. So one of the things that we can do to better maintain this algorithm is use meaningful identifiers instead of G for guess and N for the number. So use meaningful identifiers and G should be guess. So we're gonna draw the NOT gate first. NOT is connected with B by a OR gate. Now both of these brackets are connected using a exclusive OR XOR gate. That is our logic expression diagram for the logic gate. Okay, complete the truth table for the given logic expression. First then let's solve for not C. So C is going to be flipped. Let's solve for each of the brackets. So bracket M is B or not C. So let's connect B or not C. And after that, let's solve for the bracket N, which is A and B. So A and B is N. And finally, we need to connect M and N. So M is represented by a bracket, N represents another bracket. And both of these are connected using exclusive OR. Exclusive OR means we need a exclusive value for the output answer to be 1. Question 8. A bus company has set up a new database table called bus to store the details of the buses leaving the main bus terminal. Question A. Identify one appropriate data type for the field return. The field return is storing yes and no values, so this is going to be Boolean. Ever part B na A second part. So A2, state the reason for the data type chosen. There are only two logical response, yes or no. That is why we opted for Boolean. Question B, write the output for the structured query language statement. So select route ID, destination and time. So we are selecting 3 fields from the database bus where driver is equal to A Patel. For A Patel, where driver is equal to A Patel, so whenever we have A Patel as driver, we are going to output the route ID, destination and time. Now part C of this question, complete the SQL statement to display only the destination of the buses that have a return. So let's select from destination because that is what we are going to display. So select destination from the database bus where, let's give the condition that where return is equal to yes. So when there is a return, we display the destination. Question B, the variable A and B are used in a program. A holds a whole number, B holds text. Write pseudocode statement to declare the variable a and b. So to declare a as integer because it holds a whole number, declare b as since it holds a text, declare b as string. Part B of question 9. The function odds returns odd if the value of x, the input, is an odd number, and returns even if the value of x is an even number. So we need to write pseudocode statements to define the function, which means to create, to declare the function. And second requirement is call the function using parameter a and store the return item in variable b. So let's define the function. To define the function, we need to write function and the identifier, which is odds, the name of the function basically, the function odds, and the format of its input. So it is going to take x as a parameter, and the data type of this parameter is integer. This function is going to return string, even or odd basically, so string. Now let's check if mod x comma 2, which means if x, the input provided by the user, the parameter provided by the user, if this number when divided by 2 returns 0 as remainder. Let me say that again. If the number provided by the user, basically could be simple, if the number provided by the user when divided by 2 generates a remainder of 0, it means it is a even number, because যে কোনো নাম্বার যেটা 2 দিয়ে ডিভাইড করার পরে 0 রিমাইন্ডার জেনারেট করে সেটা একটা ইভেন নাম্বার হয়, which means this number is within the times table of 2. That is the end of function. Sorry, that is the end of if statement, end if, end function. Function call. So call the function what the question says. Call the function using parameter a. So odds is our function. The parameter for odds is going to be a, and the result is going to be stored in variable b. Question 10. The flowchart represents an algorithm to calculate grades. So we have start, we have input, we have an input variable. We're checking it a few times. The question asks, complete the trace table for the algorithm using the input data. So when we have 21 as an input, 21, is 21 greater than 40? No, 21 is not greater than 40, not greater than 60, not greater than 80. So therefore, our grade is D, and we output you achieved a D. For the second input, 46. 46 is greater than 40. Yes, so we receive a grade C. 63. 63 is greater than 40. Yes, so we receive a grade C. And we output you received a C. C grade. You receive a C. So there is a problem with this algorithm. Any number that is greater than 40, it doesn't go under the grade B or A column. It always qualifies for a grade C, which is incorrect. So for the rest of the numbers except 12, we have you received a grade C, and for the last input 12, you received a grade D. Part B of this question, explain how the flowchart can be changed to produce the correct output. For this, the first statement, let's write place the most restrictive condition at first by placing the first decision box to a score greater than 80. This is a 4-mark question, so we need to write. For the second statement, let's write place the least restrictive condition at last by placing the last decision box to a score greater than or equal to 40. Now by most restrictive I mean not very number are gonna pass the greater than 80 mark, but most of the numbers are going to qualify if it is greater than 40. So greater than 40 is the least restrictive condition. We're going to place it at last. And lastly, for the last statement, let's write now change the first decision box, the first process box to grade is assigned to A. Change the last process box to grade is assigned to C. And finally, here we have the 15-mark question. For the 15-mark question, there is a certain way to read this question. So, a question to jona amaderke reading skills apply korte hobe. Amra firstly loosely question take pore feli. The 1-dimensional array competitor name contains the name of 25 competitors in a tournament. সো আমাদের একটা 1D অ্যারে আছে, একটা লিস্ট যেখানে 25 কম্পিটিটরস নেম স্টোর করা আছে। দিস কম্পিটিটর নেমস only. Another two-dimensional array competitor score contains the points scored by each competitor in the 5 events. So competitor score একটা two-dimensional array, so it is a table যেটার মধ্যে points থাকে for each competitor in 5 events. So there are 5 events. Since there are 5 events, there must be either 5 rows or 5 columns. Let's read on to understand if the points are within the columns or the rows. The first dimension of this array contains the index of the competitor. So the first dimension means row, because by dimension we mean either the x-axis or the y-axis of this table, either the horizontal dimension or the vertical dimension. The first dimension in array is considered to be the row, and then we consider the column. So row is going to store the index of the competitor. So each row is going to store the index, the number of competitors, and the second dimension contains the score. So the column is going to store the scores. Each competitor receives a score out of 100 for each event, and there are 5 total events. These scores are manually entered into competitor score. So the user has to enter these scores in the array competitor score. তারপর বলা হয়েছে medals are awarded to competitor or the competitor. So there is a possibility of plural medalists who have the highest point score in each of the 5 events, the highest total point score for all 5 events. So understand these 2 points, the highest point score in each of the 5 events. So the player of the match, so we need to award the player of the match, and secondly we need to award the player of the tournament, the highest total point score for all 5 events. The second medal is for the player of the tournament. The first medals are for the player of the match, and there could be multiple medalists that means there could be multiple player of the tournaments, there could be multiple player of the match. The one-dimensional array points stores the total number of points scored for each competitor. So what is the difference between competitor score array and the points array? The points array stores the total number of points, so we need to add them. So here we are going to use the totaling algorithm, whereas in competitor score we're just going to enter the scores, and in points we need to add them up and to find the total. Now the main portion of this question, the requirements. Write a program that meets the following requirements, and we're going to fulfill each requirement at a time, but it doesn't go like that always. সব সময় আমাদের কোশ্চেনে সব মানে সিরিয়াল ওয়াইজ রিকোয়ারমেন্ট ফুলফিল করতে হবে, that is always not the case. So একটু আমাদেরকে অ্যানালাইজ করতে হবে যে which requirement to fulfill first, but this question seems simple. Only we have only around 5 requirements. So let's see. Requirement number 1 takes an input. So একটা input নিতে হবে. We need to validate score. So validation check করতে হবে so that the scores are between 0 and 100 for each competitor in each of the 5 events. So এখানে আমাদেরকে nested for loop use করতে হবে. So one competitor, first we're going to take one competitor and then make the user enter his score for 5 of the events. Let's do that first. This is the first requirement, and in here we are going to apply nested loop to populate the 2D array. So for competitor assigned to 1 to 25, now remember that the first dimension of this array is the index of the competitor, and the second dimension is the scores for each event. So that is why the first loop is the index for the competitor. We have competitor 1 to 25 competitors, and the second loop is for the events. For each event, there are 5 events, so we're going to input 5 score for one competitor. So তারপরে আমরা একটা comment add করি that right now we are trying to validate the input. So let's introduce the repeat loop. So repeat output, enter a score between 0 and 100 for competitor 1. So competitor name, let's access the competitor name using the competitor name array. Inside the index of this array, we place the variable that we used in for loop. So for loop আমরা যে ভেরিয়েবলটা ইউজ করেছিলাম competitor, সেটা আমরা competitor name এর ইন্ডেক্সের মধ্যে প্লেস করে দিব. This is a technique that we can call it value access of an array, automated value access of an array. So for loop এর যে ভেরিয়েবলটা আছে competitor, এটা চেঞ্জ হতে থাকবে, ইনক্রিমেন্ট হতে থাকবে, and competitor নেমে যে অ্যারেটা আছে এই অ্যারেটাও incremental or gradual names আমাদেরকে অ্যাক্সেস দিতে থাকবে. So enter a score between 0 and 100 for the competitor name in even num. So we have the output statement. Let's input the score from the user, and we're gonna keep on doing this until score is greater or equal to 0 and the score is less than or equal to 100. So this is our validation check. Also, we are required to store the score in the competitor score array. So competitor score and its index position, which is the competitor and the even number, this array position is going to store the score given by the user. So এখানে আমরা স্কোরটা স্টোর করব. Also, we are required to we need to implement the totaling algorithm. তো আমরা points এর মধ্যে total store করব. So point stores the total number of points. So user যখনই আমাদেরকে ইনপুট দিয়ে দিচ্ছে স্কোরটা, আমরা এটাকে অটোমেটিক্যালি, since we are still at it, আমরা এই স্কোরটাকে, যেহেতু আমরা স্কোরটা অবটেইন করতে পেরেছি, স্কোরটাকে আমরা পয়েন্টস অ্যারের মধ্যে টোটাল করে দিব. So for each competitor আমরা পয়েন্টসগুলোকে সাম করতে থাকবো, টোটাল করতে থাকবো. টোটালিং অ্যালগরিদম আমরা এখানে অ্যাপ্লাই করছি. Calculate the highest points scored for each event. So requirement number 2. And for each event, for each and every event, so there is going to be 5 highest so we need to search the highest value for each event, highest point scored for each event, because there might be plural medalist, there might be more than one, there might be multiple, there can be multiple highest scorer, and this is an important point. So the code for finding multiple high scorers is not the same as finding a single high scorer. So একটা single high scorer কে আমরা linear search করে figure out করতে পারি, but if there are multiple high scorers, we need to match the value that is the highest scoring value with the participants that have scored that value. ঠিক আছে, আমাদেরকে ম্যাচ করতে হবে. So this is not linear search. It's a bit different than linear searching. A little bit different. So for event assigned to 1 to 5 for each of the 5 events, and for competitor assigned to 1 to 25. So for each event আমরা highest scoreটা find করতে যাচ্ছি. So first event which score is the highest score? Is it 100 out of 100? Is it 90 out of 100? So আমরা এই ভ্যালুটাকে find out করতে যাচ্ছি, not the competitor itself, just the value. So if competitor score, যেখানে সব competitorদের score store করা আছে, if this is greater than the highest in this event, then আমরা highest কে আপডেট করে দিব. So we have obtained a new highest. If competitor score যদি highest এর চেয়ে বেশি একটা ভ্যালু হয়, তাহলে highest কে আমরা রিপ্লেস করে দিব. So end if and next competitor, next event, we're closing off the loop. The third requirement Output the names of the competitor who receive a medal for the highest point score. So output the names, the plural names. In the second requirement আমরা highest scoreটা find out করেছি, এখন এই highest scoreটা যারা পেয়েছে তাদের নাম আউটপুট করব। So output the names obtained by highest score. So এখানে multiple high scorer হতে পারে, all the high scorer are gonna get a medal. So for that reason আমরা এখানে nested loop use করব, so that we can access every competitors and match if their score is equal to the highest score. যদি equal হয় তাহলে he is a medalist for the particular event, because আমরা এখানে event specific finding করছি. So check and compare with highest score. If condition দিয়ে আমরা high scoreটা check করছি. If it is equal to, if the highest score that we have already found in the second requirement, if it is equal to the competitor score stored in the array, তাহলে আমরা output করব the competitor name who scored the highest score, scored the highest in event, and the event variable. So event 1 এর জন্য হলে highest scored in event 1, second event হলে highest scored in event 2. And let's close off the if statement and the for loops. This is requirement number 3. The fourth requirement calculates the highest point scored for the 5 events. So এবার আমাদেরকে highest pointটা find out করতে হবে for the 5 event. So what is the highest score for all the 5 events? So 5 event-এর high score হচ্ছে 100. So is it the case that এমন একজন প্লেয়ার আছে যে 5টা ইভেন্টে 100 100 100 500 out of 500 পেয়েছে? So highest score কি 500 or is it 490? আমাদের এই নাম্বারটা ফাইন্ড আউট করতে হবে। So requirement number 4 is find or search for highest total, aka player of the tournament. Here we are considering all the 5 events. Okay, for counter 1 to 25, the highest is 0. This is the min max algorithm, and total already stored in points array. So points এর মধ্যে total already আমরা totaling করেছি আগে. So if points stored in the point array, let's change the name for the highest variable because আমরা highest আগে use করে ফেলেছি. So একটু change করে দিই, total highest. If the point stored in the point array, if it is greater than total highest, then তাহলে আমাদের new total highest হচ্ছে that we have, that the number that we have obtained from the array. Let's close down the loops and the if condition. এবার আমরা fifth requirement, the last requirement complete করব, which is fourth requirement যে highest pointer পেয়েছে, এই পয়েন্টটা কোন পার্টিসিপেন্টরা স্কোর করতে পেরেছে or achieve করতে পেরেছে. So output the names of highest total scorer, the player of the tournaments এর নাম আমরা আউটপুট করব. So for index 1 to 25, because there are 25 players, 25 competitors, if points of index is equal to the highest, is equal to the total highest, then we are going to output competitor name, the name of the competitor, and that will be it.